welcome Bruno Ramos, who is the Regional Director of the Americas International Telecommunications Union in Brazil. We also had the next Secretary General of the UIT, who will be starting next year. And today we're joined by Bruno. Bruno, hello, how are you? Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you fine. We here with Adrian and Oscar who say hi. And we also have some of our virtual students who've joined us from all over Latin America. And in fact, from all over the world, thanks to this hybrid aspect of this seminar. And it's great. We've also got translation. So as I was saying, I was telling people about your role, the ITU. We've seen the video that one of your colleagues sent. It was very interesting to hear from her as the next Secretary General of the ITU. I personally think that the Argentine, I think it's great that the Argentine government has supported this, and I personally am convinced of the vital role that is being played by internet in development, particularly the more marginal communities. I also think it's great that the next head is going to be a woman. I think it's great to see that the UN is giving these high-profile jobs to women. Obviously, we haven't yet had a women's Secretary General yet, and I don't know of the UN, but it's great to see that this is slowly beginning to change. So without further ado, welcome. We'd love to hear from you about your views about how the region can use digitalization and connectivity to develop, what the digital transformation is achieving in different countries, and what technology can bring to society. Thank you very much, Olga. I'd like to thank you for the invitation. Obviously, I'd like to send you all a very big hug. I would love to be with you in person. But unfortunately, I actually have to be in another part of the world right now. And I've only just landed back from Romania. It's a bit difficult, but I really hope that next year I can join you in person. Thank you very much, Olga. It's a great pleasure to join you. Now, in relation to the election of the next head, it is certainly a milestone for our organization. She has carried out an extraordinary work in the development office, where in fact we've been working together. She has transformed the development office into something far more dynamic and inclusive, carrying out specific work with the intent of achieving real impact. So I'm certain that she's really going to have make a big change as the first woman in this role. And also the Deputy or Vice Secretary General, it should be noted, is the youngest we've ever had in the history of the ITU. So we're basically giving out a really important message to our members to encourage the inclusion of women and younger people. Manaus Oscar is the new Deputy Secretary General. He must be 42, 43 at most. And it's great to have this new team in place. And I look forward to the next 4 years and the possibility of developing a much stronger, more dynamic work. Now, I have 30 minutes. I have my presentation. I'd like to share my screen. Right. Different to the previous years when I've been talking about the way in which the UN agencies, particularly the ITU, have been tackling the issue of internet governance. Today, I'm going to be talking about some specific points that are quite interesting that we've been working on, such as these global initiatives to achieve inclusion through the ITCs. I think that this is very important, and it's certainly very connected to internet, because if we're all connected, then there is obviously a problem of overload of the system. And we won't necessarily achieve our objective of being able to use the ITCs to achieve economic development. Now, there are two initiatives I want to talk about today, which are the partners to connect and then the wheel of digital transformation, or the digital transformation wheel. Connectivity, in terms of sheer numbers, has increased massively during the pandemic. As you can see from this bar chart, the growth in uptake has been huge in terms of individual access to internet. Now, you can see this as a global picture, but as I'll say further on, there's still a lot to be done. We still have 2.9 billion people who has never used or have access to the internet. And 4.9 billion people do have access. But as you can see, nearly 3 billion people are still offline. They don't have access. And the most worrying issue is that 96% of these people live in developing countries. In this next one, you can see the different regions of the ITU. We've pulled together the data from our report on global access. As you can find it on our webpage as well if you want. And this particular chart shows the different regions, the 6 regions of the ITU. And you can see on the right, the 3 little bars, how we've grouped this into countries in development and Mediterranean countries and developed countries. As you can see, the Americas are okay, but our concern is with those who have the greatest needs and find it hardest to access. So we've been investing a lot of energy in reaching 81% access. But the energy we have to invest for the other 19% will be correspondingly higher, because it's harder to access these people, it's harder to reach them. And this challenge is really quite significant. Now, when you look at most of internet access, you can see that most of it applies to mobile access. In this slide, we can see that there's been huge growth in 4G networks, but there are still we really need to achieve that 100% access, because that bit that's left are the ones that are hardest to reach and they have the greatest difficulty in accessing these networks. Now, here we are, as I was saying earlier, in blue, we can see internet users, 100% in America. We have 40% users in terms of access. it's not just about having coverage, but also cheaper access, so that more people can use this. We want to make sure that everybody is educated and capable, and we're looking at 14% left to achieve inclusion. Now, how can we solve this? What can we do in terms of tackling these issues? We had a conference earlier this year for the members of the ITU who decided on two major global aspects. We took two resolutions in these International Global Inclusion Conference. The idea was partners to connect. This is a digital coalition, and the idea is that the Development Office continue to work with this Partners to Connect digital coalition. And the other resolution was about the digital transformation so that we can help our members with the digital transformation to achieve what they need. Most of the members of this sector who are from the private sector, the idea is that everybody be able to use the platform so that we can connect our different partners in order to achieve complete inclusion. Now, these are the two issues I'm going to be talking about today. The first one, what is Partners to Connect? Well, it's a platform. It's a leadership platform where we are mobilizing new accesses in order to encourage significant connectivity and digital transformation at world level. Now, this is a platform where we are seeking to get our different partners from the private sector to mobilize. I'm sorry, I think there's a problem with the sound at the moment. I think there might be a channel that's open. Hang on a minute. Let us just resolve this for a second. Okay. I think everything's okay now. The Digital Partners to Connect coalition was launched by the ITU in close cooperation with the Secretary General Special Envoy on Technology. So we're working with this global strategy developed by the UN. It's not just our strategy, this is a global strategy. In line with the roadmap to achieve digital cooperation developed by the Secretary General of the UN's, which is about, obviously, digital cooperation, with the SDGs, we are seeking to increase connectivity in terms of digital transformation, with a focus that's not limited on developing countries, but the idea is to focus on small countries as well, small island states in particular. The four pillars of our Partners to Connect framework is access, connecting people everywhere, adoption, value creation, and accelerate. So I'm going to tackle each of these. As regards access, we're looking at infrastructure, affordability, and cybersecurity. The adoption pillar covers the mechanisms of the different information and technologies, including skills, content, and inclusion. Value creation is about innovation, entrepreneurship, new apps and services, and the digital economy. And in terms of accelerating this, innovation in financing, project viability, and the constellation of investors. Now, let's have a look at the pledges. These are what each one of the partners pledges to do. It's about their commitments on the platform. So the member states are partners in this program. Private sector send their pledges. Firstly, they're financial. They're about politics, political and regulatory. There's a defense commitment and there's a programmatic one. It's about a monetary commitment, the political commitment in terms proposed is about legislative or regulatory form. The defense commitment is when an entity promotes the coalition's objectives. And then there's a programmatic commitment. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the numbers that we have in financial terms and the commitments made on the platform. The new resolutions of the CMDT set out a clear mandate to overcome gaps and ensure that there is a continuous forward movement for these commitments. There will be events and reports so that we follow up on the implementation of these commitments, and we will drive the implementation of the commitments in each country to accelerate the national digital transformation strategies in each country. It's important to say that this platform and the pledges that we've received mean that we are today joining the dots. So looking to create a global commitment from private enterprise and seeing where we can place, how we can put the different partners in contact. For instance, it could be university, which has pledged to provide cybersecurity training for, say, 1 million people. So we can find other partners in the region, enabling us to set up a network of different partners who can work together in terms of implementation of their different commitments. So we're seeking to define this at the moment. We're working on it as our Geneva headquarters, and we will be working in the Americas next year with a couple of pilot projects in a couple of countries to implement the commitments. And we're still seeking to define these countries. Obviously, those which most need it in our region. So in these countries, the idea is to roll out an implementation pilot project to connect the different commitments from private sector partners with the financial capacity and the size that's relevant to each of these countries. Now, let's look at the second solution, which is the BDT Digital Transformation Wheel. These are the three pillars: access, adoption, and value creation. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how this actually is a roadmap for each of the countries so that they can find the the resources which are currently scarce in order to build a structure or a framework which will enable them to implement these forms of development and digital transformation in each country. This that you can see here, this is a very, very big take on the digital transformation, something which the development sector has been working on in the UTI. And the idea is to use this as a structure or a platform that enables us to channel our efforts to make as much impact as possible on different countries. In the past, there's been a lot of work carried out, but without a clear structure. And the idea is that this digital transformation wheel will help us to structure our work better. Now, the most important thing is that this wheel carries within it an enormous amount of data. It looks quite complex, really, if you look it up on our webpage, but all the data is there. And the first thing in terms of diagnosis is how we use the data. This is excellent data sent directly from the administrations. And you can see the number of indicators that we're working with in order to tackle each of the areas under the different 3 pillars, which are value creation, access, and adoption. We're talking policies, regulatory structures. We've got 53 indicators in that area. We have what we call a regulatory tracker, and we have G5 benchmarking. These are all indicators that show us how we're doing in each of the countries regarding the structures that have to do with access, adoption, and value creation. So we've started with some excellent data enabling us to plan our work properly at country level. We have diagnoses from many countries in the Americas, which have been developed on the basis of this wheel. And at our office, what we're doing is to open a communication space with the different administrations so that we can see where they are in terms of our diagnostic wheel and use this information to propose actions that seek to achieve inclusion and digital transformation in each one. There are 6 steps in our DT wheel, our digital transformation wheel: diagnosis, validation, a deeper analysis, recommendations, the identification of the appropriate interventions based on our products and tools, and a commitment from partners to connect, because the next bit of my presentation has to do with how we bring both of these initiatives together, the wheel and the partners to connect. Then we identify a range of interventions based on the tools and services that we offer. We have 10 different sectors: infrastructure, training, services, so on and so forth. And within all of these, we can look at how we provide consultancy, project development advice, capacity building, analysis, different tools, dialogue platforms, and initiatives, specific initiatives. Implementation is carried out in strict and close coordination with each country and partners. And finally, there's monitoring and evaluation. And so this is what we're starting to do now with our members in the region. These are key elements to be considered in each construction block, from institutional arrangements, which we must have in terms of access. Obviously, we need to have these institutional arrangements. Maybe we need to set up committees on digital transformation so they can oversee the development of ecosystems and create awareness campaigns. Obviously, policy and legislative frameworks, the regulatory aspect is very important. The development of new legislation and regulations, sustainability, circular economy, the development of policies. Then we need the certainty that we take into account our sectoral requirements. So we need to talk in each country we need to talk to the agencies responsible for implementation and define the different roadmaps that take into account the definition of needs, actions, schedules. All of this is in the part of the sectoral requirements. Connectivity and digital infrastructure. We need network development, technologies, which people need to share infrastructures. This is a more technical aspect. And very, very specifically, we need to build trust. So in each of these blocks, we have our different committees which handle consumer protection, immediate response, problem response groups, and these are different blocks that each of the countries need to take into account. Now, here I'm talked a little bit about more in detail, and finally, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about how we are articulating our efforts and strategy with Partners to Connect, and how this links in with the DT wheel within a global strategy that can create a positive impact. Now, it's very important to remember the fact that the ITU is just one of the many agencies able to work on digital transformation. And joint work, we understand to be the best way of finding solutions within the context of the SDGs, these 17 Sustainability Development Goals of the UN. So this is a way of developing a strategy, an organized way of working together so that all of our partners can work together to achieve development targets within each country. So we're going to be working on 4 aspects: access, connectivity, infrastructure, affordability, and cybersecurity. Now, how can we work with Partners to Connect and the wheel? For instance, there are key issues: economic stimulation, potential interventions such as sharing structures, economic deployment, work at community level, availability of energy. We're looking at microenergy, the use of many different technologies, technological interventions, the availability of different and management of spectrum. These are new ways of sharing the spectrum, as there is a low infrastructure availability and regulatory issues. So these are the points that we are seeking to solve between how we can seek to develop people's commitments and find solutions in terms of interventions. Now, in terms of affordability, broadband, possible interventions to change the legal framework of a broadband, high cost of devices, we need to finance access to these, the problem with trust in different services, and then there's the aspect of cybersecurity, the implementation of CERT and CERT 1 are insufficient. So that's something that we really need to tackle. Olga, I know that we've been working together with this on the school in terms of how we train people to tackle these and develop the right experience so that we can work together and find the best way of building capacity. Low protection and resilience, which is our cybersecurity strategies, new ones, with the resilience of critical infrastructure, are priorities. So these are the potential interventions that can be made as coming out of the wheel. And these could be part of the pledges made by Partners to Connect. Now, the adoption area, these are three main areas: skills, digital inclusion, local content. The business about skills, the problem is that they are literacy levels are low, so our digital inclusion levels. We're looking at the limited access to training. Part of the problem is to do with digital inclusion. There is gender inequality and the development of policies to enable that we have the business of antisocial behavior online and having regulations to safeguard children.
Especially child protection, and we've been working on a lot, protection of online, and not having enough data or experience for gathering this data. And lastly, probably we could have local content
y herramientas, sistemas de contenido basados en código abierto. Para el área de enfoque.
Now, for the third approach, it would be value creation and building digital ecosystems depending on three pillars. We have capacity building, innovation, where we intervene in higher education, labor force training, clarity, and digital strengths, how to share data specific to a country. Innovation that is focused on different ecosystems like startups, and that would be multi-stakeholder approach. And in terms of applications as service, we have digital public infrastructure design for profitable use. It's a robust digital infrastructure that should be secure, and internet governance or data governance, access protection framework, governmental framework of data. So these examples are the ones that we have drawn for this example. Then we have acceleration, financing, innovative financing, project viability, investors. We have the topic of finance, how we use different sources of financing, public financing, whether it is combined finance, blue and green bonds, specific project financing, whether it is private financing, support to startups, financing or IT infrastructure financing, decentralized finance or funding, preparation of the project within viability of projects, management and mitigation of risk, optimization of regulatory taxes specific to this topic. Viability of projects, that would be risk mitigation, capacity building, and to conclude, we have cluster of investors like traditional financing sources, regulations of cybersecurity, data protection law, risk management, independent regulators or regulatory agencies, tools to improve transparency and accountability, and then access to information and data. I have clearly shown by this presentation a very effective proposal with concrete examples, clear examples, which are key of all the pillars that I presented within the digital wheel for all these key topics or for all the foundation blocks. We have clearly explained what we can do, and I believe that the best thing we have with this working methodology are concrete proposals to pursue development and digital transformation for countries. This is not just about that we are requiring training on investment efforts. No, that is for a new strategy of the digital transformation that we're pursuing. We have clear examples to work jointly with every single pillar to find a better coordination and together with the digital transformation of every single country. So we go back to this topic after assessment, after checking what the country is like. We have the coordination also for the country strategies in terms of digital transformation. And the way we define it for every single country is very different. Each country in Latin America has a different perspective in connection with digital transformation, and we all share the same vision of communication and of information, which is the foundation in order to pursue this inclusion and digital transformation. I think my time is up. Olga, I believe that this is the end of my presentation, and hopefully you heard me okay. And later I'm going to send you the PowerPoint presentation. You can upload it in the South School of Internet Governance. I will be at your disposal. Olga, thank you very much for giving me the chance and for the invitation. Hopefully I'm going to be with you next year. A round of applause for Bruno. And I am very impressed. Everybody was taking pictures of your PowerPoint, and I'm sure that we really appreciate if you send us. What is the window of time that you have considered? Because you have gathered or secured very good funding sources, at least according to the REIN and everything that you have coordinated with countries and finding the relevant agencies. So this could be very impactful, especially in the developing world. For partners to connect, most of the commitments or the pledge, most of the pledge are for the next 4 years, because private partners probably they will do it in the near future. I don't know if Corinne explained this. I think that with financial pledges, it's like accounts for $26 million, which is a lot of work, efforts that should be made to connect all the points. In Partners to Connect, we are going to find ways to connect those countries that are seeking this funding. For example, if there's a company, I still remember a company that they want to provide training to 1 million people in the next 2 years. And in that case, we are going to try to find those countries that are in need to contact these companies so these countries can have access to this training course and be the country that will have access to the training courses. So it's one of the pledges. I believe that this is a very it's hard work and nothing is done by itself. I believe that the most positive thing or the benefits that arise out of the internet governance dating back to the year 2000 until the summit of 2012, that only with stakeholders can we find a common success. So I believe that Partners to Connect is based only or on a multi-stakeholder approach and everybody's efforts, not only the International Telecommunications Union. Karina has a question for you.
Karina from Bolivia has a question for you. Hello. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was not only didactic, but plenty of added value. Very impressive. As a Bolivian, I was struck by two things. When you were talking about countries that don't have access, you gave Bolivia as an example, in fact. The issue of telecommunications, we have a vice minister of telecommunications, public works and housing. Are they the people that need to get in touch with you? You said that you were looking to develop the pilot projects for digital transformation in 2 countries. So do you need to take contact with them, or should you be talking to the president's office? And my second question is training for women. I am a teacher in communications and computer technology. There are 10,000 students at our faculty. 2,000 are students are in political sciences, and 50% of these are women. So I just wanted to say that. I have another question here. Hello. I'm Emily Spinoza, and my question is, as one of your main objectives is to seek to develop and resolve, one of your main focus seems to be the issue of infrastructure, and the second is training for society in general. Now, the context is very complex, particularly for more vulnerable people, right? Now, bearing this in mind, I wanted to share my personal opinion. In commercial terms, I believe that the main factor in terms of how you substantiate these terms, the main factor should be training, bearing in mind that at commercial level, it's more important. Is it more important for you to create a company? When you create a company, you need to have someone you're going to sell to, right? And now I see that many organizations are interested in creating the infrastructure to support a network, but not necessarily in training those who are going to be consuming these services. Now, my question is, in terms of your experience and knowledge, what would be the main contribution that could be offered for all of these countries in Latin America? I have another question here from someone in Kenya. Because most of our students are from Latin America, but we are joined by people from all over the world. I'm going to read it in Spanish. Have you been working with UNICEF on the JIGA program? Can you tell us about the progress and impact in terms of connectivity for other schools in this line, particularly in the Global South? Well, there you go. Lots of questions there. Right. The first questions. There are 2 countries we'll be working with, which we'll be working with, and these are Bolivia and Paraguay in the region. Both of these countries are on our radar as the first countries in which we want to deploy our pilot project. At all events, we are looking at less developed countries, we're looking at small islands. There are specific points that we want to develop here. So, yes, we are, in answer to your question, we are working in this area. We're going to be working with a specific country and then obviously roll this out in other priority countries. But in Bolivia, the ITU is working directly with the administration. These are obviously member states, right? So we're working with the government and specifically with the communications ministry. But in my presentation, I showed you how we target the country and then how we plan our work based on this focus point. But ultimately, it's the administration, the government, that decides what the focus points are for deployment in their country, because we can't just work with the telecommunications sector. In terms of digital transformation, all economic sectors are involved. You know, Ministry of Interior, Health, you know, there are lots of areas that are linked to this. And certainly when it comes to training women, we have a great deal of work to do here. As you can see, I have shared my email, so if you have any more specific questions, we have a project which is called American Girls Can Quote. We're working together with 4 countries, working with girls, young women, to teach them about programming. In fact, today we have a major event in Brazil, and we have other countries that we're targeting too, and we're looking to spread the project further. Now, the question about the main point of all of this. Look, my presentation shows that there is no a single point. The point of access is important, training is, building legal frameworks. In our region, in each country, we have telecommunications laws that date back to the 1990s. There are very few countries that have updated their telecommunications legal frameworks. The sector has completely changed, because back in the 90s, it was all fixed telephony, landlines. So people don't use telephone lines anymore. In most countries, their legislations are based on outdated structures. So training, both for our union and for me personally, is vital. But my presentation shows that our digital transformation wheel, the inclusion and training and development is very, very important. They're all important, but there are also other points. We shouldn't be limited to one alone. Now, in relation to the question about JIGA, this is joint work that we're carrying out with UNICEF. We're working with 3 countries, rolling out pilot projects in the region. Most countries we're in contact with who are interested in JIGA. And actually, this is another presentation because this is a very specific strategy. There are 11 steps making up JIGA, which we develop with each country. ranging from assessment, mapping, capacity checking, working with children at each of the specific schools. So I'd be delighted to give you a presentation on Giga, but basically most countries are still being contacted in the Americas region. This is still very, very embryonic. But the question came from Africa, and I know that the regional office in Africa is in contact with all of the countries there, and the Giga work that we're developing is incredibly important in terms of inclusion. Thanks very much. Well, let's all say thank you to Bruno. Big round of applause. And I just want to revisit two things you said. Next time, you're going to be with us in person. And the second thing is that we're here to help you with anything that you need, whatever it is, whether it's partners to connect and the digital transformation wheel. Thank you very much. Hugs from Adrian, Oscar, and all the team and all the students. As you can see, that they're from all over the world. So bye and see you soon. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Wasn't that interesting? If they can really do all of this, it's going to be the most incredible transformation, particularly for developing countries. We're just going to have a short break so that we get ready for the next session.